find them all in?
Oh yeah, man. I run about 15 to 25 different feeders on all of my thousands of acres of public ground or of private ground that I have access to. And really the sheds find themselves. All I have to do is pull up in my brand new 2023 truck and hop out in my Kennebec boots and step on the ground, and they pretty much just get right into my truck, and I don't even have to pick them up.
Oh man.
Yeah, this
is gonna be a good one.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, I'm right about this time is usually when I have my first cup of coffee, but today I haven't stopped drinking coffee, so I'm like, I'm ready. I'm ready.
We are about to be on spring break next week, so I'm fired up too. And we were supposed to originally get this big storm, which I was kind of disappointed in because of getting out and scouting and doing some things. Aaron and I are actually going to be getting together next weekend, but so now it's not supposed to really hit at all. It's supposed to be maybe just a little thin layer of some ice and snow. So people that wanted to get out this upcoming weekend should still be able to get out, which will be good for some scouters and get out there, maybe find some sheds. But all right, Dan, well, you text me, I texted you yesterday just to verify we're good to go for today. You asked me what's the topic, and I said to not suck, how to come, and I guess that's kind of the motto where we could be. So
some people struggle with that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And sometimes, you could be, just on that struggle bus, but what are things that you're doing now? I know scouting's a big topic, and I do want to talk a little bit about that and just certain things, just because I want your perspective. And I think I've watched even some of your content stuff when you break down properties of entry and exit routes and certain things like that. And I really like the way you do it. So what are you doing now to not suck come fall?
Well, I don't really look at this process as a yearly process, because on one farm, it's almost property based. So I have one farm. I know the ins and outs of it. I know where the deer are going to be during the hunting season. I know the pinch points, the access routes, just from years of collecting data on that farm, 15 years in this property. I kind of know a lot about it. Now, on a new property that I don't have access, or that I haven't had that much experience on, like this new farm that I picked up this spring, that's more of a hands-on, boots on the ground, learning curve, moving tree stands, trying to find the pinch points, trying to find the heavy trails, trying to find edge, all that stuff. And so really what it is, it's less about what you're doing at a certain time every single year to find success for the next year. It really is just, it's a collection of information over the course of all the years that lead you to finding success for that particular year.
Dan, when I did that, when I interviewed you for that article that I did for Truth from the Stand,
yeah,
we talked about you're always saying, like, just stack the intel, just like you do, like a smallmouth fisherman will be like, oh, the fish are relating to this kind of structure. But when stacking the intel is the perfect thing to do. Like, you're looking for the same kind of features that you see on one property on another property, but how many times are you seeing it not really line up that way? Like, maybe the deer 20 miles down the road don't really like ridge points. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's, in the whitetail world, and when it comes to people saying something like, you got to get downwind of a bedding area.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen bucks cruise during the rut upwind of bedding areas. I've seen deer walk with their back to the wind. I've seen deer walk around in the daylight on October 1st. So there is an exception to absolutely every single rule. And so when it comes to stacking the intel and collecting it, what I'm trying to do is find the highest percentage rates. And how I find that is by spending time in a tree stand. Scouting is great, right? It can tell you what has happened, but you do not get the full, what's the word I'm looking for? The full plate of information until you hunt through that particular farm throughout the early season. Some guys want to call it the lull. I think it's bullshit, but
Yep.
the lull, the pre-rut, the rut, the post-rut, the late season. And so really what you're doing is you're watching deer shift throughout that entire year as vegetation comes and goes off of the trees, as food sources change, as deer behavior changes. And that has more, in my opinion, to do with the successful hunt the next year than it does that particular year.
Right.
Yeah. Now, when you look at that new farm for you, Dan, coming up, and this past year was your first year actually hunting that, correct?
Correct.
So how much stock do you put into right now getting out there and getting boots on the ground?
Well, it's one of those things where I need to go out at least once. And it's a property that I can walk in one day because a majority of it is ag. There's one giant vein of timber that runs through the property, and it's not that big. And so it is thick and it does hold a lot of deer. But I should be able to do it in an afternoon and really get an idea of how deer, because I've already went through a hunting season. I've had a little bit of scouting through when I went there in August to drop trail cameras, and then again in early October to hunt, and then during the rut as well. So I have a good idea of how deer are moving through the property now. The scouting is going to be looking for me. If I go and do a shed hunt and scout, that is going to be looking for really intricacies. And what I mean by that is the ability to micromanage my stand locations to get them not close enough, but in some of these lock tight spots where, thermals, like I'll have the thermal advantage or I'll have a wind advantage because of some kind of terrain feature, or maybe finding a trail that curves and J hooks and is up against a creek bed. They don't necessarily cross it. They just kind of come around it. And it gives me an opportunity to find a place to set up with a really close cutting the wind type scenario.
Kind of like those, I've been trying to find those like deer hub areas, like where is going to concentrate deer a lot. And that's what I'm really excited for, to, like I was said earlier, to go with Aaron next weekend, just because it's a property that I hunted my whole life. And I've been listening to a couple different episodes of podcasts the last couple days. And, there are things that I'm starting to, things are clicking a little bit more. And I hope that by having more eyes see this property and walk these areas with me, I'm hoping that it could maybe broaden some horizons, kind of like falling into that old rut of, these are normal areas that I've been to. It could produce deer, no doubt about it. However, there seems to be that one spot though that I keep missing some of the big boys that I'm after, right? And that's where I'm hoping to kind of find that concentration. So like when you were saying about those J hooking areas and those spots like that, that's that hub of those, that's what's kind of coming to mind, what I'm hoping to find.
Yeah. And sometimes those aren't easy to find. Sometimes those take years to find. And really what it comes down to is you're always, like, your brain, for me, my brain, I didn't learn this right away, but my brain has to be on. Like, a deer walks where a deer walks for a reason, because it feels comfortable in that particular spot at that particular time. So you have to use your brain to see why that deer did what he did. So if a buck is up and moving on, October 1st at 1 p.m., what made him do that? Why is he doing that? And so once you can start to figure those things out, it allows you to get more detailed into those stand locations.
I think even like asking yourself simple questions while you're out, just like, why would a deer walk here? Because you forget to do, I forget to do it all the time. Is like, I'll find myself like, I'm not finding any sign. And I kind of like look around and I'm like, oh, why would they even walk through here? Why bother?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of guys, including myself, if I've had a rough day at work, or if I've, my kids have been on my ass or something like that, and I go to the woods, I just shut my brain off.
Yeah.
And I'm not thinking about things. And so when you shut your brain off, you're just waiting for a deer to show up instead of, hey, I saw a deer in the distance. What's he doing?
Right. Well, do you ever get hyper focused on something too? Like, oh, today I'm going to find the biggest buck bed on the property, and all you're focused on is finding the bed, but forgetting about why would a deer want a bed there? What is he doing to get there? That kind of stuff. And you're like forgetting just the foundations of what you need to do to find that buck bed.
Yeah. I mean, from a hyper focusing standpoint, I do that, but I don't, I do something a little bit different. I'm 100% terrain feature focused.
Yeah.
I like this whole notion for me of buck beds, like going and finding a buck bed. I can go and find a deer bed, but a buck bed that this buck, a particular buck goes there over and over and over, just does not happen where I hunt in the country that I hunt.
Yeah.
And so I used to try to do that, right? I used to say, hey, Dan Infault, I'm trying to apply this buck bed method to how I hunt. Well, he's hunting in a completely different terrain than I am. And so me trying to apply that strategy onto the farm that I hunt is a waste of my time.
Yeah.
And so it's awesome for where he's at. But for me, deer bed in so many different areas, even if the wind is a little off, let's say it's a different bed for north and northwest, or north and northeast. They're going to have different beds on different pieces of the property. And I wouldn't say they necessarily bed in the same spot every single day.
And you're hunting, I mean, what you're hunting, I think what you've described is there is pretty big chunks of timber.
Yeah.
So the terrain is more important than the actual bed, because they bed on specific terrain, but they might not, like you said, they might not bed in the same places every day. I'm sure that's what you're finding.
Yeah. I hunt in a mix of ag, like it's ag river bottom ground for the most part. And then where that river bottom meets is big timber.
Right.
And so I have really big chunks of timber that I have access to, that also ag fields. And so, yes, on the end of those points, I found deer sign and buck rubs indicating that, hey, there's deer there. But on the opposite side of a ridge usually is a low spot into an ag field. I've seen buck beds there too, on these fingers that lead up to the field. And so you can really sit and try to find out where they're at, when you get in there, which is great. It's good to know, but I don't really worry about that too much. I worry about where deer are coming through, because ultimately what we're doing is ambush hunting. So I don't necessarily care about where he's bedding per se. I care about what terrain feature he's going to use to go to his food source of choice by the end of the night, or come back from in the morning.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah.
So Dan, you were saying about you put those cameras out in August. Are you making any adjustments right now or anything along those lines with your cameras?
As far as moving my cameras around, I move them around all the time, all year round. I try to find different spots, different crossings. Like here soon, hopefully, I think I'm going to end up taking some mineral, and I'll dump some mineral out and in front of a cell cam just to get an inventory, see what deer are still holding. And then that should last through most of the spring. And then I'll go change my batteries again, and then it'll be velvet season. And so those particular cameras stay in the same spot all spring, and up until it's time to move them off the mineral station and move them to a different location into those pinch points, creek crossings, fence crossings. And then the trail cameras also help me really refine where that deer movement is on any said property.
That's good. Here's one question I wanted to ask, because we last talked mainly on for your podcast right after the new year. We're getting ready, breaking in 2023. Now that the season's been over for, over a month plus and everything, and you've done some trade shows, you talked to people, you relived some hunting moments throughout the season. Is there anything that now you look at like, man, I overlooked that this past year?
Oh, I guess I haven't really reflected on anything like that. Like looking for something that went wrong, because the outcome of my season, as far as Iowa was concerned, I would consider a success.
Right.
Even though the whole recovery of my animal was an issue. I wasn't able to retrieve the meat off of him. I found him, but he was already eaten by coyotes. Now, if I look back and say, did I make a mistake from the strategy standpoint? The only thing, and this would be if I was hypercritical of myself, is I had a giant on another farm, but I couldn't get a consistent bead on him. He would show up here one day and then another place the next day and another place the next day. And I really didn't have a good idea of what terrain features he was running. And so really what I did at that point was I went to this new farm where I was getting a ton of action and a ton of consistent action. And that's kind of what led me to go there and start my rut vacation there. And it didn't take too long to connect. But what I will say is, if I could have done it differently, I probably would have spent some time trying to get on my other farm and see if there in fact was some kind of pattern that I could have tried to find this other buck on.
Yeah. Cause that's the piece that I'm currently doing right now. Like I said, with me not coaching right now for the first time in 10 years of a spring sport, I've been out a bunch of times already. I've been trying to e-scout a bunch of different areas as well to hopefully get to, so right now, like that's my main thing. And like, I know we were joking about going, shed hunting and everything, but the one thing that I've been trying to is break things down and slow the process down. Like the other day I stayed in one little spot. Like I still was able to hike 6 miles. However, I stayed in certain areas when I found good sign a lot longer than I could have. Like I could have done a lot more mileage, quote unquote, has covered more ground. But when I found that sign, I stayed there more. So I wanted to I would pull up the map and I would look at certain scenarios of like, okay, where's this deer coming from? Where's an access possibly? Because I found this creek bottom that was just completely destroyed with rubs, and some of them still look fresh. Aaron, I know I sent you like that video and everything, and I posted it on social media, but I don't think it really did it justice, because that was just a small snippet, Dan, of just rubs galore.
Yeah.
And on the front side, it was coming on top was like an old brush clear cut that led down into some open woods, bench after bench after bench, and then it kind of dropped down into the open woods that led into the thick like cedar area and some pines with the creek bottom. And then on the other side of that, it lifted up into just real thick, nasty Mount Laurel. And so I kind of stayed down there for a long time to try to put that piece of the puzzle together, like how I would hunt it and how I would do that. So, you're talking about going out and doing certain things now. I'm finding if I find a shed, it is by pure luck. It is by me, all that type of stuff, because I'm really focusing on when I do get out or had the opportunity to get out during this time, it's that deer sign and trying to tell the story. What are maybe certain things that people should really key in on that's really important now for next year? Like obviously, yes, finding scrapes, rubs is all good, but maybe even like the deeper side of things. Like if like for you, for example, if your farm has corn this year, next year, if it's a, swapping the rotation out, going to beans, what are certain things like that? Again, kind of doing like that overlooked question. I said, like, what are things that maybe people are just so hyper focused on, like, oh, there's scrape, oh, there's a rub, and not really piecing other puzzle, pieces of the puzzle together.
So I kind of go back to what I mentioned earlier about sitting in the woods during the hunting season. So what I would be looking for at this point is a kicking off point. right? I would be looking for the best possible tree stand to kick off a rotation, right? So when my vacation comes October 29th, November 5th, whatever it is, I'm looking for a location to where I can walk into the timber and get a good, and guys can even do this. It doesn't have, I wouldn't consider this an observation sit, because when you're in some of these thick areas, I can't even see 40 yards. So what I'm getting at here is find those starting points. And then usually they're not as far in, maybe they're on the edges, but what that allows you to do is to just creep your way in to a spot. Or, like you were mentioning, it sounds to me like you're hunting in almost like a valley or a big drainage that's like this, right? Mm-hmm. And so it might be on the, let's just say this way is south and this way is north, right? So you have this big drainage. The wind is coming out of the north, and it's coming over top of this ridge, and then on the south it's coming over here, and then east and west is just funneling right through. And so what I would do is I would find a southern wind and a northern wind kickoff point. And so the first day you go, oh, I got a south wind, I'm going to be on this side, and then from there you can see the bottom, or you can, but you're not necessarily going for a like an observation sit. You're actually in a terrain feature, and you're actually hunting a spot, but a spot that's on the outskirts, and then you can creep down if things aren't going your way, and you just, oh, well, hey, I saw something. I saw a doe group come through down here. And what that does is it allows you to move your stand location 20, 40, 50, 100 yards, whatever the case may be, closer to that deer movement. And then what you're doing is you're just micro adjusting the entire time. So I would definitely be looking for the kickoff points.
Yeah. Aaron, what have you been finding out so far?
For me, I'm just kind of like going over some new areas. Really not new areas, but areas that I've hunted my whole life, maybe small game hunted, just to put some different miles on. Cause I know, some of my core areas I know so well that I have put in the time and the miles in those places. And, I have an idea of where I might be able to find some sheds in those places. So I think finding sheds in those places that I know really well will confirm things that maybe I'm missing or help to. Plus I know, maybe a scrape line moves a little bit just because the vegetation got taller, or maybe they're going through this trail now because the browse is better over here. So some of those like fine details are good to relook at your stuff, but I'll be doing that later this month. So mostly it's just been new stuff, finding interesting access right now and getting creative in some heavily pressured areas, that kind of thing.
Dan, when you look at this time frame and people are scouting, but they're also planning those out-of-state hunts, and I know you've done, you go into plenty of out-of-state hunts and those opportunities. When you go into one like completely blind, other than e-scouting, like what steps are you taking to make sure you're putting yourself in the best position, like to get an opportunity, you think?
Man, really what I'm doing is this: I'm on whatever app a person is using, and just finding kickoff points.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I'm going to go to, like, especially when I'm out west and I'm going on a hunt where there's different terrain features and I can see a long ways. I'm going to a high spot. I'm looking through my binoculars. There's my spotting scope. If I'm going to go on a whitetail hunt, I'm going to go find the biggest, baddest terrain feature that I can go in there, or that I can find. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to set up in an area where the wind is going to be 100% in my favor. And then I'm going to start, and I'm just going to keep moving. I'm going to look for deer sign like normal. I'm going to look for deer movement, and really looking for deer movement at that point is key. But that's again, kind of, I understand that the focus of this podcast is to try to, think about what a person should be doing right now. And it's hard for me I haven't done that in so long because I've taught myself to be better at less scouting, more scouting while you hunt.
Mhm.
And just because of time restraints, right? 3 kids, wife, business, activities, and so I've really taught myself. I've learned all of this through doing these types of activities throughout the years, and scouting when I was younger, and going hard, and shed hunting 30 or 40 days a year. But I can't do that anymore. So I'm taking all that knowledge that I've learned and I'm applying it to more of a mobile, in the moment type strategy.
Yeah, that's perfect because coming into it, that's exactly like I said. Yes, this year I have the more chances to get out there and scout, but that's the opportunity where I've fallen into that, right? Family, work, all that type of stuff. And so when you think about going to these out of state hunts, because, like yourself, Dan, I know you're interested in possibly going to Kansas or another big whitetail type state like that. I know for a fact that my chances of getting out there are very slim, right? And that's an expensive tag. That's a good opportunity. So like you said, I want to take all the knowledge that I've learned. And I wrote down what you said. I want to get to that biggest, baddest area where the wind is going in my favor and get in there and go. And that's, I think, what myself and plenty of hunters kind of, don't do enough of. And I admit I fell victim to that last year. That was a goal of mine last year. This past season was I want to scout more, but man, when that time hits, I'm like, I should be up somewhere. I need to be hunting.
Yeah.
And damn it, during rifle season, when I was walking around, I was like, holy shit, look at all this sign I missed during archery season or within the last couple of weeks that I did not capitalize on.
Yeah. And this can be, and I'm just speaking for myself, but this can be the most overwhelming part of trying to figure out deer and be this mobile aspect, because I've put myself into a position where I've scared myself into isolation and just staying in one spot way too long. I've also fell victim to no deer here, move, no deer here, move, no deer here, move. And I haven't given it the proper amount of time to sit in one spot and watch maybe a cycle of days go by. And so because if you get pigeonholed into looking for rubs and scrapes, you will eventually miss something. And a perfect example was this past year where I had a cell cam on a ridge. And so I went out and I just had an extra one and I didn't use it. And I said, well, I'm just going to put it here. There's no rubs, there's no scrapes, there's no real sign. There's some deer trails. And so I set it there in September and I let it send me pictures all year, basically all year. And there was a lot of really good deer on this little ridge. Went back and pulled it thinking it's going to be destroyed with tons of rubs and scrapes. There was not one rub. There was not one scrape on this entire ridge. And so again, you can't really be you shouldn't put all your eggs necessarily into hey, here's a rub line basket.
Right. I think one thing you said too is like hunting off memory is stacking the odds and learning the things is perfect. And as long as you take the time to apply it somewhere else, because Absolutely. If you are, I guess, if you're hunting off memories and you're only hunting off memories, you do pigeonhole yourself into, I'm just going to go to that spot because it's been good for my entire life. Yeah. Instead of like learning that kind of like that new thing, like you said, the observation stuff, maybe you need to move that stand 50 to 100 yards because that's the difference in the, woods don't stay the same forever.
No. And I will talk out of this corner of my mouth with what we just talked about, but on the other corner of my mouth, I will say this little device right here and being able to document like deer sightings on whatever app that you use, you know, hey, I saw a buck here, I saw a rub here, and you over a course of years start to put the puzzle together, you can really get a really good idea of exactly how deer move on a property. And let's just say you have a satellite image and you put all of these, you remove the satellite image and you just take all the points of interest and not even really talk about what those actual points are. You can put it down on a blank white sheet of paper and say, if I was a deer hunter, where would I hunt on this piece of paper? And you would hunt in the areas with the most dots on the map or on that piece of paper, just out of, you know, statistics. Right. And so documenting memory is great, but documenting that and then finding where like the highest percentage of deer move over the course of a year or 5 years or 10 years, it probably changes a little, but it doesn't change. Like all of a sudden a deer isn't just going to start traveling on top of ridges, like skylining themselves. That's not going to happen. Right. They're going to stay on that military crest or lower. They're going to come up in concealed bottoms at the lowest point of fields. They're going to work their way through pinch points in certain areas. They're going to jump fences in certain areas because that's where they feel comfortable. And so just as much information that you can gain from collecting it, you can also look at that and say, well, here's where deer are not. And then I don't even pay attention to those areas.
Right.
That's good. Here's Dan, what is the, just because from listening to you for many years and everything, what would you say is the Dan Johnson, like golden rule that you abide by for whitetails, no matter where you're going?
Make sure your wife is happy before you leave for a hunt. And I say that in all seriousness. Like if I've been on hunts where I've left and she's been mad, and then I'm driving down the road and you get the text, I'm not even in the tree yet. When will you be home? Like the kids are going crazy, and so you have to take care of home first and then go hunting second. Now, if you are a single, no kids guy or gal and has the world in front of you, I would say hunt as many days as you possibly can, as many hours as you possibly can, October 1st through January 10th here in Iowa. And I think you should hunt every single one of those days, because you will learn the most about how deer move throughout the entire hunting season when you're able to just put as much time. Now, granted, you want to have awesome access if you're going to hunt that many days, but be prepared to be mobile, and the more mobile you are and the better your access is, the more you can hunt in a given farm. But if you're that public land guy, man, you should be out as much as humanly possible.
I love what you said, because obviously I really do consider our Antler Up podcast to be an educational based. Obviously, I'm a teacher. I love learning for myself. I love getting that information out there, looking at things at a different perspective. But I love that you said that, because I have a ton of respect for you because of having what you've built, right? You have your own business, you have your own dream. I know, I love being a part of the Sportsman's Empire, and just because of the fire and the drive that I know where you want to take this and what you want to do with it. But you're also a husband, you're also a father. And I think, I said it a couple weeks ago on a podcast, don't get me wrong. Am I ecstatic to get out scouting this year? Yes. Do I think it's not going to guarantee me I'm going to kill a deer next year because of it, right? It could help. Yes. But I know some people will say this is, they're so dead red on, if you're not doing this right now, you're not going to kill a deer. Well, how many individuals are out there that don't do this, but go and kill a big buck?
That's a scare tactic. That's all it is. Let's be honest. Most guys could give up a whole year of scouting and go out and kill some form of a deer. Right. It's not like you just all of a sudden forget, like, oh, well, now what do? I didn't scout this year. Holy shit, I should go I'm just gonna sit in my truck in the parking lot, and I'm just gonna ride this one out because I don't have enough information. Bullshit. I mean, you know what to do.
Yep. And that's exactly why I'm glad you said what you said, but I also am glad when you said a little bit ago of, you're taking what, when you go into these new either states or areas of even heck your own property, you're still scouting, you're still looking, you're checking things of, hey, this is, like you said, it's not hot. I may have to move. I may, be able to tinker around, but you're able to do that and make that decision.
Right. I'll say this, man, like I've had the opportunity. I've had the choice in front of me. It's been October. I looked at the forecast the night before and I said, oh, dude, tomorrow morning is going to be money. It's going to be money. Like a front just passed through. It's going to just be money. And instead, I made the decision to go to my kid's soccer game because I have just as much fun going and doing that than I do going out and hunting. And so the hunting will be there. The hunting's always going to be there. Well, if you want to say, well, what if this, what if that? Well, whatever. Hunting is going to be there. Your family, your kids or whatever, that shit changes every year and it goes away quickly. And that's one thing that I've realized is like, I look back at pictures and I know this is kind of getting set, like less about deer strategy, more about family, but I look at the pictures of my kids and I'm like, holy cow, I don't even remember when you were that small. That is how much time goes by in life like this.
Yeah.
And so I just want to make sure that I can be the best father and husband that I possibly can be, and then go out and hunt my balls off. Right. Yep. And so it's all about taking care of the things that are most important, and the things that are most important like are not and should not be hunting.
Well, it goes hand in hand. When they're happy and they are not, like you said, you're not getting that text message of when are you coming home, you're focused then, right? Things are taken care of and you're able to do your own thing. And that's, I agree. I 100% agree with that.
Yep.
You find like it's paying it forward with your kids too. Like you find you take interest in their interests and they also start to take interest in yours because you just care about each other.
Yeah, I think in a way that's an accurate statement. I spend time with them. I show them that I love them. I coach their activities. I, wrestle with them. I color pictures with them. I, do the things that play catch outside.
Yeah.
And then when they say, hey, Dad, because I feel like I'm a good dad and because I treat them awesome, they want to spend more time with me. And so when I go out into the woods and they say, hey, Dad, can I come too? I say, yes. And so I, unless it's like peak rut and I got the beat on a big buck, I'm like, yeah, you're sitting this one out, buddy. But there's going to be a time when I'm going to teach them everything that I did not have a teacher for. And if they want to take it to the next level and be a hardcore serious hunter, I'm gonna do whatever. I'm gonna give up everything in my life for those moments.
Right. Yeah. When my little girl is the same way. Like you take interest in what she loves, and she's like more prone to be like, "Hey, can we go do this?" And I'm like, "Well, do you like that?" She's like, "Yeah, you like it, so I like it."
That's awesome. That would melt my heart.
It does every time.
It does that.
Yeah, it does every time. And last week, a couple does walked through the backyard, and she's like, "Dad, that one looks like it would make really good Mississippi pot roast."
That's awesome. That is good.
And really, and here's what I'm finding: it doesn't necessarily need to be these big gigantic moments,
right,
where you're taking them out on a hunt, or you're taking them scouting, or you're doing something deer, right, or doing something turkey. I think some of the most fun I've had with my kids in the outdoors has been pulling up to a boat ramp and literally throwing rocks in the water for hours, or sticks in the water, or splashing in a mud puddle, or going to a dam and watching fish jump out of the water or whatever. It's it's the little things that set the foundation.
Yeah.
I agree. And it's all, I know, like you said, Dan, we got away from the deer hunting strategy, but it's important because I listened to a podcast not too long ago with John Eberhart and Exodus guys where Jake asked them, what is your biggest failure or something that you regret? And John came right out and said, he's like, putting my kids through a divorce. He's like, when I had any time free, I was out hunting, I was doing this, and it put a lot of strain on them. And he's like, don't get me wrong, I took my kids hunting, but that divorce, I wish I didn't put them through that because of me being gone all the time. And it does make you, my daughter will be 9 tomorrow. And, it's the same thing. I think of everything that we all just said, and it's important to be there and share moments with them and do all that type of stuff. So it's all relatable.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
And I'll be honest. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll finish this,
Go ahead.
this thought real quick. But a lot of guys, especially in this hunting industry, look up to certain people and they say, oh man, I wish I could be this person. Well, some of these people are putting hunting before everything else in their life. Kind of like what Eberhart was saying in that comment. But I know a lot of guys who are like that, and a lot of guys who are just like, you know what? I'm choosing hunting over maybe, I want to say my family, because if there's an issue and hunting is the main problem, then you're not doing your job as a father or husband. In my opinion, I feel like if you take care of your family, you can go do hunting as much as you want, as long as expectations are set for your partner and your children. But I saw that, and as I learned that some of these badass hunters are just like, I talked to a guy one time, he's like, dude, my dad has killed some absolute giants, but he did not go to one of my football games growing up because he was out hunting all the time. And so that kind of struck me as, holy cow, man, like I don't want to be that person.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. You hit it well. And actually, you're not the first person to kind of chime in on that discussion of how some of these people are. Well, Dan, what are maybe, we mentioned possibly Kansas. What are some other big goals you have maybe coming out this year? Hunting, Sportsman's Empire. What are some other things that you have coming down the pipe?
Yeah. So as far as hunts are concerned, I just have to kill a mule deer this year. Like, I've been really frustrated over the past handful of years of trying to get on a mule deer and kill one. Okay. That's what I want to do. Now, outside of that, I got a couple options as far as I'm going to be applying for a Kansas tag. If that happens, then I'm going to try to hunt Oklahoma while I'm down there, with a focus heavily on Kansas. But I just want to continue to have as much fun as humanly possible and do some of these aggressive hunts and hunt aggressive, because I learned something today. On Tuesday this week, I was at the gym and I was lifting heavy, and then something happened to my knee, right? And so today I actually went to a doctor and he took x-rays of my knee, and his exact words were, "This looks like garbage." The x-ray. And so I just one second, I'm going to see if I can pull it up for the video for you guys to show you my knee. I'm going to see if you guys can see this. Do you see this? Do you see the screw and the staple in my knee from a past surgery? He's like, you have a lot of bone spurs, and usually I would not recommend a knee replacement to someone your age, but I think you might be needing a knee replacement here pretty soon.
Sounds like you're going to need more than one.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like, you'll have to have one, maybe by the time you're 45, and then another one when you're 70 or something, or 65 or something like that. And so he goes, I would rather have it now where you're young enough to live your life, and you can still do all those things, because once you get into your 70s and have a knee replacement, the healing process is going to be much longer than 45. And so I think I'm going to have to schedule a knee replacement here pretty soon.
Oh man.
Oof. I want to do that after the mule deer hunt.
Oh yeah. Or well, after the hunting season, like after the archery season, I'll give up on, or maybe January 1. And
Yeah.
from January 1, I may have to skip on a turkey season, but from
Yeah.
January 1, I feel like I could rehab myself if I'm 100% focused to be back out in the woods by September the following year.
I think that's reasonable at the age you're at.
Nine months or something like that. Yeah.
That's a reasonable goal. You'd probably be good before, a little bit before that.
Yeah.
My dad is in his early 60s just now, and last year he had both of them done. And he was up and down the mountain with me this past year on his own, doing everything. So that's
Awesome.
and he loved it because he's almost to that age of retirement. So he feels really good now. And he's like, man, when I finally retire, I'm going to be hunting every day.
Good for him, man.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, man. Whenever we have patients that are like, "Oh, I'm gonna do one at a time," even though they know they need both of them, I'm like, "Don't do that. Just do
Get
them
it over with."
Yeah. He ended up getting one done, I think, in May, and then the other one could have been in July. Like, I mean, they weren't at the exact same time. Obviously, they were a couple weeks apart, but yeah, he had them done, and he, like I said, this year was his first full year getting after it after post-surgery, basically. And there was the time when he helped me pull up the doe that I shot with the rifle down at the bottom, and if it happened the year prior, I was having to quarter that deer out because he couldn't do it. This past year, he was able to help me, and he did it strongly enough. And so he's happy. He's definitely really happy. He's done the rehab, the physical therapy, everything that he's needed to do with it. So yeah, I'm excited for him. He's all pumped. And Aaron, I know you and I we've talked about when we both hopefully pull an Iowa tag that year, like the same year, and go out. He's like, I'm coming with you guys. I just want to come and experience it. Yeah, he could be the film guy. So hopefully,
I'm just waiting for Elon Musk to invent robot legs. And so I'll just have my legs removed, and then I'll just have robot legs, and then I won't have my ass burning so much when I'm trying to climb, up to 12,000 feet.
Yeah. Did you hunt out of the saddle at all this year, Dan?
A couple times, but not as much as I wanted to. Yeah. And as I was sitting there, I was trying to get comfortable in it. And I realized, like, yeah, this is definitely doable. And I actually think it's going to be better for my lower back than sitting in a tree stand, kind of like this all day long.
You're more prone, I think, in the saddle, you're more prone to kind of stretch your legs and stand.
Yeah.
You could just do it almost seamlessly.
Yeah. Yep.
I was curious to see what your opinion was on it and everything, and how your experience was this past year with it.
Yeah. Just, I don't have enough time in it yet, just because, I was out west and I didn't use it at all. And then when it was time I used it in the early season and a couple times, just like one time in the rut, and then my season was over because I tagged out. And so I really do need to, I shouldn't say I need to, I will be messing around with it a lot more this year, especially if I draw Kansas and then go down to Oklahoma for sure.
Yeah. I'm hoping to this year. I'm actually changing it up a little bit. I'm still going to be doing exactly everything I've done. Aaron, I know we've talked about one sticking. However, I'm not one sticking. I plan on to practice just doing the full rappelling. I plan on using my 3 tethered one sticks, using an aider. I use the GC1 from Backwoods Mobile. It's like a 3-step aider. I'll get up as high as I can, and I am 100% confident going up that aider, but coming down at night and stuff, it's a little wonky. So what I plan on doing this year is I'm just going to continue to use my 3 steps with the aider going up, but then coming down, I plan on rappelling down. So when I get to each step, I'll just undo it, come down, and just can use the Mad Rock to lower me down. So that's going to be something I plan on working on this spring and summer to make sure I'm proficient enough to rock with that to come fall.
You know what we need to do is get a 3D printer and print those tree spikes that guys who are in those lumberjack competitions where they run up the tree. Wouldn't that be cool if you could learn, like, teach yourself how to safely do that and not ever need climbing sticks or ropes or aiders anymore.
I think some people do that, don't they?
Yeah, they're called badasses.
Yeah.
And I don't like I don't know if I could do that.
That's probably Clint's next endeavor.
Yeah. Some states aren't some states illegal to use the
probably
spike?
on public.
I think in PA, if you got an officer on the wrong day, he'd probably fine you for it.
Like,
yeah, on public land in Iowa, you're not even supposed to shoot trim shooting lanes.
Yeah, you can't hear either.
Yeah,
and they fine you for it.
Yeah,
they do that, and there's the whole heck, we're not even supposed to use the screw-in bow hangers.
Right, same here.
Yeah,
I think a lot of states are like you're not allowed to jack public land.
Yeah, do any harm to the trees.
Yeah.
Dan, what else you got going on, man?
Really just trying to maintain sanity while life happens, with the kids and the kids' activities and all, just life, trying to maintain what I'm pretty excited about as far as the network is concerned, man, is, and I'm sure you know this by now, but the Sportsman's Empire has just released in time for turkey season 2 brand new turkey hunting podcast. Parker McDonald from the Southern Ground podcast has released his Limb Hanger series. So that's a brand new podcast. And then Paul from Ohio Outdoors has released the How to Hunt Turkey podcast. And we're working on it right now. There's going to be another big surprise, hopefully coming within, I'm hoping, a couple weeks. We can get the deal done. But it's gonna be a big one. That's gonna be joining the network, and just on top of that, man, just trying to grow the network as a whole. Make more people aware of it, because honestly, I will put the content that we put out, whether it's myself or you or somebody else on the network, I will put that content up against any other podcast, the big names included, out there, and so. That I may sound biased because I run the company and I'm associated with you guys, but really it's true. The content that we're putting out is in my opinion second to nobody. And trust me, I've heard some garbage in my life, and so I just wanted to say that, man, we're doing some cool things. We're going to be adding some episodes or some video to the Sportsman's Empire YouTube channel here pretty soon. And just keep moving forward, man.
I like it. Aaron, what else do you got? Anything for Dan before we roll off?
I guess like this is kind of the time of year too for point strategy. Are you doing anything as far as that goes, Dan?
Yeah. So as far as points are concerned, not really. I'm the only preference point state that I have continuously applied for would be Wyoming. And I don't even know for elk. And deer and antelope. So they have a 50 point. It's basically, I think it's 50 points gets you a preference point. And so I'm spending $150 or $180 a year to get those 3 animals and really just biding the time until time and finances meet, which will allow me to go. Because when I go on this elk hunt, it's going to be like a once. I think this year I'm going to have 8 preference points.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think I'm going to go this year, but maybe next year or the year after. When I go, I'm going to go for like 2 weeks. I'm going to do it big. And so from a preference point standpoint, I'm definitely playing the Wyoming game. And then it's just basically educating like right now I'm in a goal-oriented mode, which keeps me coming back to South Dakota every year.
Right. And
until they change it sounds to me like they're going to try to change their draw to almost a preference point system. Then because right now I can go to every year. Right. Once that changes, then I'll have to think of something different. But from a preference point standpoint, I'm going to be just until something comes up, just Wyoming.
Yeah.
So Dan, you hunted Colorado a few years back, right?
Right.
So because I said this like 3 years ago when I started the podcast, I had every ambition of like, oh, I want to go out west. I want to do the elk hunt. I want to do all that stuff. And like what you just said, finances, time, work, family need to all line up. And I'm kind of, man, I went out west to Utah 2 years ago for a mule deer hunt. I would do that one again. I would definitely go out west, do a mule deer. Obviously, I can't speak on because I have not done the elk hunt. Aaron, you did it this past year. You tagged down on a beautiful bull. What was it? 298,
292,
292 bull. Kind of like, drop camp, right? Like you kind of had an idea, but it was still, you had to go out there and find and hunt and kill. That I am intrigued about. That I would like to do. That sounds great to me. But man, Dan, I've said it now a couple times. I want to do adventures like for the whitetail. I just want to go take the knowledge that I've learned that I keep messing up on to try to improve upon. I just feel like if I were to go on an elk hunt, I'm going to be 30 years behind the 8-ball compared to only being maybe 5 years behind on the 8-ball with whitetail, right? Like I just feel for me, that's where I'm at. Like kind of like what you just said for going to Wyoming, 8+ points and going 2 weeks. That is my goal for Iowa. Like I like all these big whitetail states like that. That's my goals. I want to try to put as much time and effort into that specific hunt because, it doesn't come around so often.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Colorado, like Colorado, I love that place. I definitely want to go back, but it's getting harder to find good spots in that, according to my buddy who lives out there, just because number one, everybody's coming to it. And then Colorado is also making more zones preference point based, which means that the people who were going there are now going to other over-the-counter units, and it's just becoming really congested. So that I hear that.
Yeah.
On top of that, when it comes to Iowa, I'm gonna strongly recommend this. If you decide to put in for your Iowa preference point, it's such a once in a lifetime opportunity for guys that you need to dedicate a full week, half week, 4 days, whatever trip during the March time frame. Maybe you want to call it a shed hunting trip. You do what you want, but to get out here and scout ahead of time some of this properties, because if you do, you have the opportunity. And right now, there are rules, there's legislation being put in place that will absolutely destroy what Iowa has for a whitetail herd. These politicians are trying to ruin it. Anyway, get out here. You could have the hunt of a lifetime just by going into a good spot that you've scouted, and there's the opportunity for a 150 class deer to pop out.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying is like, I think it's even worth doing it. Well, you live there, Dan, so tell me what you think is like doing it over a couple of years to take the time to like, I'm a couple of years out from it. I wouldn't be opposed to going this spring and doing a shed hunt scout just because I feel like, I mean, even when you go and you do that in-season scouting, the next time you have a way leg up, like you have a starting point instead of just starting from ground zero.
Yep, absolutely.
I think one thing too with points for elk that I think I noticed that the unit that I hunted this year it's basically a 1-point unit, but there's still I want to say I looked at the statistics on it. I think it's a 40% chance to draw without a point in that unit. I think a lot of people don't they just automatically, oh, I want to go over the counter because I know I don't have to worry about buying tag, blah, blah, blah. And then they just do that. But then you are, I think you give yourself a little bit of a better chance than going to a unit that's even as low as 1 point.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good stuff. I like it, Dan. Well, I appreciate you. It's finally had the chance to get you friggin' on. And like I said, it's been an honor to be part of the empire. And like you said, all our podcasts on here are phenomenal. I love just being able to let it play during the day whenever I'm driving, when I'm hitting the gym. What's funny is, you get revved up. I mean, very rarely anymore am I listening to music while I'm working out because
there you go.
yeah, I'm listening to what content we're putting out and what Aaron's doing with some of his buddies over at Exodus and everything like that. So I just, it's been fun to, do this and be a part of this. And man, you do a great job. And so it's an honor and privilege to have you on finally and talk to you. And I'm looking forward to once it starts getting to kind of even more into that summer, gearing up to see what you have planned and what is kind of shaking out for the upcoming season for you.
Yeah. I gotta pay attention to when these draws and preference point purchases are happening, so I don't miss them. And then I'll, just, I guess, start putting the pieces of the puzzle together then.
Yep. I like it. Well, Dan, make sure you go listen to Nine Finger Chronicles. Make sure you're already downloading every podcast from the Sportsman's Empire. You have the gear podcast.
Yeah, hunting gear podcast. Yep.
Hunting gear podcast as well. So go follow them. Go check us out. Everything that we have. Dan, anything else that I missed that you want to say before you head off?
All right. I want you to go to iTunes and
Okay.
I want you to look up the Antler Up podcast, and I want you to give it a 5-star review and say a really nice thing about Jeremy Dinsmore. And what that'll do is that'll help Jeremy in his rankings, and more people will find him because this is a good podcast, and I think more people should listen to it. So everybody who's listening needs to go do that right now.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Well, everybody, go give Dan a follow if you're already not doing so. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on to help out today. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week, everybody. Antler up.